It wasn't the cheerful laughter of children, nor the twinkling light strung across every house that grated on me. It was the lies beneath it all. From my perch on the hill, I could see the whole town of Ash Hollow basking in its festive glow, a snow globe of forced cheer and plastic smiles. I had spent decades watching them, their faces frozen in the same facade every December. Families flocked to the plaza to erect the towering Christmas tree, a gaudy symbol of everything wrong with this world. Beneath the surface, I saw what they really were: jealous, cruel, small-minded. This year, I'd had enough. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I have no illusions about humanity. The Christmas season is a theater of hypocrisy. This town, like every other, thrives on pretense, pretending to be kind while devouring one another in secret. I know because I was their victim once, long ago. Ash Hollow chewed me up, spat me out, and forgot I ever existed. But I remember everything. Every cold stare, every snicker behind my back, every lonely Christmas Eve spent in silence. They thought I'd disappeared. But I stayed biding my time, waiting for the moment when I could tear down their precious holiday and make them face their ugliness. Tonight I started with their pride and joy, the tree. The plaza was deserted when I crept in, bundled in my tattered coat against the biting wind. Snow crunched under my boots as I approached the enormous evergreen. Its ornaments sparkled under the pale moonlight, each one a testament to the townspeople's hollow traditions. I reached for the first bauble, a shining red sphere. Its surface reflected my face, twisted and scarred by years of bitterness. I crushed it in my hand, the shards dug into my skin. But I didn't care. One by one, I ripped ornaments from the branches, scattering them across the icy ground. Strings of lights followed, pulled down in great, tangled heaps. It was cathartic, exhilarating even. Until I felt it. A presence watching. I froze. Mid-sabotage. The wind howled through the square, but it wasn't the wind that unnerved me. It was the silence beneath it, a heavy, suffocating quiet that made the hair on my neck stand on end. "Who's there?" I hissed, spinning around. My voice echoed off the buildings that surrounded the plaza. There was no reply, just the faint jingling of a bell, though the sound was distorted as if underwater. Shaking it off, I turned back to the tree, but something had changed. The decorations I'd smashed and scattered, they were gone. The ground was clean, the tree untouched, its lights twinkling innocently at me. Impossible. I backed away, my breath visible in panicked puffs. The bell jingled again, closer this time, accompanied by a faint laugh. Not a joyful laugh, something deeper, guttural, mocking. This wasn't the town retaliating. This was something else, something ancient. And it was watching me. The jingling bell haunted me as I retreated from the plaza, my heart hammering against my ribs. I told myself it was the wind or maybe the old church steeple swaying in the storm. Lies, I knew, but they kept me moving. My hands were raw from the broken ornament, the blood freezing in dark streaks across my knuckles. I stumbled back to my sanctuary, a decayed house on the edge of town. It was all I could afford after Ash Hollow chewed up my life and spit me out. The walls groaned under the weight of neglect, the windows frosted over like blind, cataract-stricken eyes. My home, my refuge, the one place I thought I was safe. As I latched the door behind me, the sensation returned, eyes watching. Somewhere just beyond the threshold, something lingered. I pulled the curtains shut, blocking out the oppressive darkness. But it didn't help. The silence pressed against the walls, thick and smothering. Somewhere, far off, the bell jingled again. I shook my head. "You're losing it," I muttered, dragging an old chair in front of the fireplace. "Just tired, that's all." Sleep wouldn't come. Instead, I spent hours planning my next strike. If I couldn't destroy the tree outright, I'd take my vengeance elsewhere. I imagined the faces of those smug townspeople when they woke, the shattered nativity scenes, stolen presents, and their precious lights torn down. The thought brought a crooked smile to my lips, but deep down, something twisted in my gut. The image of that untouched tree, standing pristine despite my sabotage, haunted me. As dawn broke, I ventured out again. The town was coming alive, oblivious to my work the night before. Families bustled about, children shouting with excitement as snowflakes dusted their faces. Their joy was a knife in my side, but I pushed on, unnoticed among the crowd. My coat hung low over my face as I moved through alleyway and shadows, picking my targets. The church nativity scene was first. The porcelain figures of Mary and Joseph stared blankly at me as I reached out to topple them. My fingers brushed the smooth ceramic when a sharp prick of static shot through me, making me pull back with a hiss. "Damn it," I muttered, shaking my hand. When I looked again, the figures weren't porcelain anymore. They were flesh, eyes wide and unblinking, their faces twisted into grotesque grins. The baby Jesus lay swaddled, but its tiny mouth stretched impossibly wide, a silent scream frozen in time. I stumbled backward, tripping over the manger. A guttural laugh rumbled through the air, close, but everywhere at once. My head whipped around, searching for the source, but there was no one. The town square loomed ahead, its Christmas tree standing defiant, its lights pulsing like a heartbeat. I fled back to my sanctuary, locking myself inside once more. Panic clawed at my chest, and for the first time in years I felt powerless. Whatever was out there wasn't human, wasn't natural, but it was watching me, feeding on my fear. As night fell, I heard the bell again. This time it wasn't distant, it came from inside the house. I turned slowly, dread creeping up my spine. There, on the fireplace mantel, sat a small ornament, a golden bell, glinting in the firelight. It hadn't been there before. I approached it cautiously, my pulse pounding in my ears. The closer I got, the colder the room became. Frost crept along the floorboards, snaking toward me. I reached out, fingers trembling, and touched the bell. It rang. The sound was deafening, reverberating through the house like a thunderclap. Shadows exploded across the walls, twisting and writhing as if alive. Laughter erupted, deep, guttural, and wrong. It wasn't my laughter. It wasn't anyone's. I stumbled back, clutching my ears. The shadows converged in the center of the room, taking shape. A towering figure emerged, hunched and grotesque. Its face was obscured by darkness, but two pinpricks of light burned where its eyes should be. "You think you can take Christmas away?" It growled, its voice like the scrape of rusted metal. "This is not your story anymore." I couldn't speak. My throat closed as I sank to my knees, paralyzed by its presence. The bell jingled in its clawed hand as it leaned closer, its breath reeking of decay. "This is my time," it hissed, "and you are mine." I don't remember blacking out, but I woke up on the icy floor, my breath rising in frantic puffs. The fire had gone out, the golden bell was gone. The figure, whatever it was, had vanished, but its presence lingered. I could feel it in the room, in my bones, crawling under my skin. I wasn't alone anymore. For the first time in years, the thought chilled me to my core. I had lived with isolation for so long, but I thought nothing could frighten me. But this wasn't loneliness, this was intrusion, something invasive and malicious, something that wouldn't leave. I forced myself to stand, my body trembling as I stumbled toward the window. Frost had overtaken the glass, etching strange, jagged patterns that seemed deliberate, almost like words. I wiped at the pane with my sleeve, but the eyes wouldn't budge. Beneath the frost, I caught a glimpse of the town square. The Christmas tree still stood, brighter than ever, its lights pulsating like a living thing. The bell jingled again. This time, it wasn't a faint sound in the distance. It was everywhere, reverberating through the air, wrapping itself around me. My head spun as the room darkened, shadows pooling in the corners. Something whispered my name. Soft at first, then louder, more insistent. "Stop it," I shouted, my voice cracking. "Leave me alone." But the whispers didn't stop. They grew louder, overlapping, an endless chorus of voices. Some were deep and guttural, others high and childlike, but all of them spoke the same thing. "You cannot escape. You are one of us now." I ran out into the frozen night, the wind cutting through my coat like knives. Snow fell thick and fast, coating the streets in a suffocating blanket of white. The town was eerily quiet. No laughter, no carolers, not even the crunch of boots on snow. It was as if I were the only one left. I didn't stop until I reached the church. Its heavy wooden doors creaked as I pushed them open, stepping into the dim sanctuary. Candles flickered along the walls, their flames unnaturally still. The air smelled of wax and something sour, like rotting fruit. The nativity scene was gone. Where the porcelain figures had stood, there was now a gaping hole in the floor. I approached cautiously, peering into the darkness. It wasn't a hole at all. It was a tunnel descending into the earth, its walls lined with jagged roots and glistening frost. From the depths came the sound of bells, louder now, joined by that same guttural laughter. A voice echoed from behind me. "You shouldn't have come here." I spun around, heart racing. It was the priest, his face pale and gaunt, his eyes sunken as if he hadn't slept in weeks. He clutched a rosary in trembling hands, his knuckles white. "What is this?" I demanded, gesturing toward the tunnel. "What's down there?" He shook his head, his lips moving in silent prayer. "It's been here longer than any of us, longer than this town. It feeds on us, year after year, and we let it. We have no choice." "What are you talking about?" My voice rose, panic setting in. "What feeds on us?" The priest's gaze shifted to the floor. "The spirit of the season," he whispered. "You thought you were destroying Christmas, but you were only waking it up." The ground beneath us trembled, and the candles flickered violently. From the tunnel came a low, guttural growl, followed by the clatter of hooves on stone. The priest grabbed my arm, his grip surprisingly strong. "You need to leave now." But I couldn't move. The growl grew louder, joined by the deafening jingle of bells. Shadows spilled from the tunnel, stretching across the sanctuary, twisting into grotesque shapes. One by one, the candles extinguished, plunging us into darkness, and then I saw it. The figure emerged, its hunched form scraping against the tunnel's walls as it rose. It was taller now, more monstrous, its twisted limbs adorned with ornaments that glinted like jagged teeth. Its face was still obscured, but its eyes burned brighter, piercing through the shadows. The bell dangled from its clawed hand, its chime reverberating through my skull. "You called me," it growled, its voice like a landslide. "You summoned me with your hatred, your bitterness, and now you will serve." I tried to run, but the shadows moved faster, coiling around my legs like serpents. The priest screamed, clutching his rosary as the figure descended upon him. I turned away, but his cries of agony echoed in my ears, each one punctuated by the jingle of the bell. When I looked back, the priest was gone. The figure turned to me, its burning eyes locking onto mine. It raised the bell, shaking it once. The sound tore through me, 1,000 voices screaming in unison. And then silence. Silence blanketed the sanctuary, but it wasn't comforting. It was a crushing void, one that swallowed sound and thought alike. My ears rang from the bell's chime, my knees buckling as I clung to the pew for balance. The figure loomed over me, its shadow stretching impossibly long, as though the darkness itself obeyed its will. "You wanted to ruin Christmas," it growled, its voice dripping with mockery. "Congratulations. You've become part of it." The air grew colder with every word it spoke, frost creeping up the walls and over the stained glass windows. The vibrant reds and greens dull to lifeless shades of gray. I opened my mouth to scream, to demand answers, but no sound came out. My breath crystallized in front of me, hanging in the frozen air like a silent plea. It stepped closer, the bell jingling softly in its clawed hand. I could see it more clearly now, its body a grotesque patchwork of holiday imagery, twisted into something unrecognizable. Strings of broken lights wrapped around its limbs, digging into its flesh like barbed wire. Its face, a void of darkness, seemed to ripple, faint outlines of twisted mouths and hollow eyes flickering in and out of existence. "You see," it continued, "this season isn't about joy. It's about power, control. You thought you were exposing hypocrisy, but you were feeding it, giving me strength." It leaned down, the shadows around it writhing like living things. "And now you'll serve me, just like the others." I staggered back, desperate to escape, but the shadows blocked every path. The figure raised the bell, shaking it once more. The sound was deafening, tearing through my mind like a blade. My vision blurred, the world around me spinning as memories surged to the surface, memories I had buried long ago. I was a child again, standing in the corner of the school gymnasium during the Christmas pageant. The other kids laughed and pointed, their voices cruel and sharp. My parents sat in the audience, their faces blank with disappointment. I'd failed them. I'd failed everyone. The memory shifted. I was older now, sitting alone in my cold, empty apartment. A single, tattered ornament hung from the bare tree in the corner, a futile attempt to capture a happiness that had always eluded me. The bitterness clawed at my chest, its weight suffocating. You've carried this for so long, the figure hissed, pulling me back to the present. Your hatred, your pain, it's what makes you perfect. No, I croaked, my voice hoarse. I just wanted them to see the truth. It laughed, a sound that rumbled through the sanctuary like thunder. The truth, they don't care about the truth. They never did, they only care about their masks. Their comfort. The bell chimed again, and this time I wasn't in the sanctuary anymore. I was in the town square, the Christmas tree towering over me. But it wasn't the same tree. Its branches were blackened, its ornaments replaced with jagged shards of glass. The lights flickered like dying embers, casting eerie shadows across the snow. And the faces, oh God, the faces. Each ornament held a reflection. But they weren't just reflections, they were people. I saw the priest, his face contorted in agony, his eyes wide with terror. I saw the townsfolk, their smiles frozen in grotesque masks, their mouths open in silent screams. This is the truth, the figure whispered, appearing beside me. This is what they've built, a hollow tradition, feeding on the weak, the broken. Feeding on you. Something inside me snapped. No, I said, louder this time, I won't be part of this. I won't let you win. The figure tilted its head, the bell swinging lazily from its claw. Oh, but you already have. The shadows surged, wrapping around my wrists and ankles, pulling me toward the tree. I struggled, screaming as the ground beneath me cracked and splintered. The tree's roots erupted from the snow, curling around me like the gnarled fingers of some ancient beast. Do you feel it? The figure taunted. The weight of the season, the weight of their lies. I fought against the roots, my body trembling with the exertion. The bell rang again, its sound filling my mind with a cacophony of voices. But this time I didn't crumble. I focused on the faces and the ornaments, the people trapped within. I didn't care about their hypocrisy anymore. I didn't care about their lies. They didn't deserve this. You can't stop this, the figure snarled, its voice cracking with rage. You are nothing, maybe, I whispered, my voice trembling. But I'm not you. With every ounce of strength I had left, I reached for one of the ornaments. The moment my fingers touched it, a searing light erupted from within, engulfing the tree in a blinding blaze. The figure roared, its body writhing as the light consumed it. The shadows recoiled, their grip loosening as the bell fell from its claw. The last thing I saw before I blacked out was the tree collapsing in on itself, its branches burning away like paper. The bell lay shattered in the snow, its sound finally silenced. When I woke, the snow was falling again, soft and silent. The air was still, unnervingly calm, as if the world itself was holding its breath. I was lying in the town square, my body aching, the ground beneath me scorched black where the tree had stood. The ornaments, the lights, the jagged roots. Everything was gone. For a moment I thought I'd won. The monstrous figure, the bell, the oppressive shadows. They were gone, vanished into whatever abyss they had come from. But the quiet wasn't peace, it was the kind of silence that waits, watches, the kind that promises something worse. I stumbled to my feet, the echoes of the figure's voice still rattling in my skull. You are nothing, it had said, yet I had stood against it. I had destroyed its weapon, shattered its hold on the town, or so I thought. The people of Ash Hollow began to emerge from their homes, their faces curious, some even smiling. They looked at the ruined square, the charred earth, and the empty space where their precious Christmas tree had stood. But they didn't panic. They didn't grieve. They simply stared. A woman walked past me, her child in tow. She glanced at me briefly, her smile unnaturally wide. "Merry Christmas," she said, her voice cheerful but hollow, like a recording played too many times. Her child didn't speak, didn't even look up. The little girl clutched a small ornament in her hands, a golden bell, gleaming in the winter light. I tried to speak, to warn them, but my voice caught in my throat. They didn't notice me, didn't acknowledge the destruction around them. It was as if none of it had happened. Or worse, they didn't care. The bells began again, faint at first, then louder, chiming in perfect rhythm. I turned toward the sound, my heart sinking. Across the square, the plaza's speakers crackled to life, playing a cheerful Christmas tune. The melody was wrong, warped, the notes stretched and twisted, but no one seemed to notice. The townspeople went about their day, their smiles frozen, their eyes empty. I backed away, my legs shaking. I had to leave. Ash Hollow was no longer just a town. It was something else now, something alive, something tainted. I ran, my boots crunching through the snow as I fled the square. The streets blurred past me, the houses all identical, their windows glowing with warm, flickering light. But the light wasn't warm. It was cold, sterile, like the flicker of a dying bulb. Shadows danced behind the curtains, shapes that didn't belong to the people inside. I reached the edge of town, gasping for breath as the forest loomed before me. The trees stood like silent sentinels, their branches heavy with snow. For a moment, I hesitated. The forest had always been my refuge, but now it felt like another trap. The bell jingled faintly behind me, growing louder, closer. With no other choice, I plunged into the woods. The shadows here were different, thicker, darker. The trees seemed to close in around me, their branches clawing at the sky. The air was heavy, oppressive, every breath a struggle. I didn't know where I was going, I just knew I couldn't stop. The bells followed me, echoing through the trees. I couldn't tell if they were real or if they had burrowed into my mind, a permanent reminder of what I'd unleashed. My thoughts spiraled, fragments of the monstrous figure's voice taunting me. You summon me, you will serve. I tripped, falling face first into the snow. When I looked up, I saw it again, the tree. Not the scorched stump I'd left in the square, but the tree as it had been before. Tall, perfect, glowing. It stood in the center of a small clearing, its lights pulsating like a heartbeat. And, beneath it, the figure waited. It was different now, smaller, more human. It wore my face. I staggered back, shaking my head. No, no, this isn't real. I stopped you. The doppelganger tilted its head, a cruel smile curling its lips. Stop me. No, you've only just begun. It raised a hand, and the golden bell appeared, pristine and whole. Its chime was soft, almost soothing, but it filled me with a dread I couldn't describe. The figure stepped closer, its movements deliberate, graceful. You thought you were fighting me, it said, its voice merging with mine, but you were becoming me. Every choice you made, every ounce of hatred you carried, it's all been leading to this. I tried to run, but my feet wouldn't move. The snow beneath me melted, turning black and slick, swallowing my boots. I screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the bell's chime. The figure reached out, placing the bell in my hand. Its warmth burned like fire. This is your gift, it whispered. The true spirit of Christmas. Now, spread it. I woke up in my house, the golden bell clutched in my hand. The shadows had receded. The frost melted, but the air was heavy with something I couldn't name. Outside, the town was bustling again, the plaza repaired, the tree back in its place as if nothing had happened. And yet I could feel it, the presence, the weight of the bell in my hand. In the distance, I heard the laughter of children. But it wasn't laughter. Not really, the bells never stopped ringing.